I'm thinking it's a bad idea. One, it costs way too much, but more than that, there's only one way in and one way out from this waterfront. So if they're not going to improve that, which I don't think they are, that's a big no for me.
I think it's kind of a weird idea for this area with the bridge here and living situations. I think with OHSU right there, I think it's just going to be kind of a interesting situation, to say the least.
They're going to charge the players and put a tax on players' salaries. So if that's where they're getting a large part of the money, that makes sense because they're overpaid anyway.
Well, that is a little bit of the flavor that I got on the streets of Portland's South Waterfront this afternoon, near what could be the home of a future Major League Baseball stadium in the Rose City. Earlier this month, we got our first look at what it could look like. 32,000 seats with a retractable roof right on the western bank of the Willamette River. The property where it would be built is called Zidell Yards, a former shipyard between the Ross Island and Tillicum Crossing bridges. Now, the group behind the stadium effort is called the Portland Diamond Project. You may have seen their motto of sorts around town, MLB to PDX. Since 2017, they've been trying to lure a Major League Baseball team to Portland. And for stretches since then, it seemed the idea was all but dead. But it soared back to life in a big way. First came the vision, those renderings we just showed you. But now is the tricky part. Paying for it. And that's where Senate Bill 110 comes in. This morning, lawmakers in Salem got a presentation on the bill. It would update a law passed back in 2003, which allowed for up to $100 million in bonds to help fund construction of a baseball stadium. SB 110 raises that threshold from $150 million to $800 million. And those bonds would be paid back by something called a jock tax over the course of 30 years. Now, a jock tax is money from state income taxes generated by the players and staff on the team's payroll. Visiting players and staff would also pay when they come to town, since they'd be playing within the state of Oregon. Now, it's that tax money that would go towards paying back the bonds rather than putting it on taxpayers. But once those bonds are paid back, money from the jocks tax would go directly to the state's general fund. More on that later. But the idea with SB 110 is to help make Portland more attractive to the MLB, with the hope, not guarantee, the hope that Portland is chosen for an expansion team. The league could expand in the next 5 years, although that's another element of this whole story that is not guaranteed. So SB 110 is sort of an early step 2 in this years-long process, and it has the support of some big names like Regional Government Metro, the state's Federation of Labor Unions representing over 300,000 Oregonians, and Portland Mayor Keith Wilson.
We need a project like this to help further invigorate our recovery, change the narrative, and energize the community and state. MLB will be a part of the renaissance that we're now charting in Portland. And we need big vision now more than ever, and the investment in major projects like this will help transform our region, and we need this kind of project for those very reasons.
Today, Governor Tina Kotek met with reporters in Salem, and she said that she's recently met with Mayor Wilson and Portland City Council President to talk about bringing the big leagues to the city.
I am fully supportive of what the city is trying to do. And I think we have a very unique financing tool that I can support. And I think it is a strong way to finance a stadium so we can have MLB come to Portland.
Now, if you've paid any attention to sports stadium construction or deals across the country, you'll be quick to point out that $800 million will not be enough to build a stadium. So what is being tossed around as if a final price tag if this comes to fruition? Well, here's Portland Diamond Project President and founder Craig Cheek.
And overall, this entire project, when you think about the expansion fee to lure a franchise, to build a world-class ballpark, to take down the land that we're going to need, and invest in all the ancillary things, it's probably a $4.5 to $5 billion investment. And we've said that we're shouldering that through our private investors. So the fact that the state can come in for approximately 18 to 20% of the overall construction cost, kind of works in our math. And so we'll round out the rest of that capital stack. And we're working on that now. And we're spending a lot of money on Zidell Yards right now to get it shovel ready.
And he is joining us now live. Craig Cheek leads the Portland Diamond Project. Craig, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
Okay, let's talk money right off the top. If the state passes this bill, that's $800 million out of the total cost that you've said could be near $5 billion. So where's the rest of that money coming from?
Well, again, to reiterate, this has always been a privately funded private capital endeavor. So with equity and debt, we will be shouldering the big part of this. But I would also like to say that we've got a strong mix of local investors that include Oregon community and business leaders, professional athletes like Russell Wilson, et cetera, and a lot of corporate partners. So we call this group our charter investors. They're our limited partners, our LPs, and we continue to add to that bench. So over time, we will include institutional investors, corporate partners, private loans, and then the public bond issuance, which was what was springboarded today, will eventually lead to the announcement of a principal general partner. So we want to intentionally diversify our funding and center around what is best for the project, the city, and the state. And we want to make this homegrown. We really have an emphasis on Oregon-centric. So as we get closer to announcing those roles and those new investors, we'll communicate first with all of our strategic partners, and MLB and state officials will be first and foremost. So we've got a really good roadmap. We've got a lot of traction, and we've got a great plan.
So are you confident, though, that you can line up nearly $4 billion in private investment? That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, and we are very confident. We've had a lot of traction and some really good initial LPs with some sizable checks. So things are coming together very well, and we'll just keep the momentum up, and we'll keep kind of stacking the wins. And everybody will see how it all kind of comes together. But today's SB 110 initial push is also a big part of the puzzle. So we were thrilled that we're finally at that juncture as well this morning.
You mentioned sizable checks there. Have any of your bigger investors given you, say, a timeline for how long their money is available? Like, for example, if you need to have the green light from the league by a certain year, or is the money there for whenever this could happen?
Yeah, we're in constant communication on those timelines. And now we do feel like it's not a marathon anymore. It's more of a sprint. And 25 and 26 will be important years. And like I said, our investors have been fantastic. They know this is a journey. They know it's taken a while. I'm 8 years in, and by the time we probably get our announcement in 27, it'll be a decade. But these things are not easy, and they're complex to pull together. But we really do have people believing in Oregon, believing in Portland, and believing that baseball is just such a great fit for our state and city.
Many people are curious. Can you give us some benchmarks for this process, like stadium construction, starting, ending, stuff like that?
Well, we've continued to stay very connected to the league, and what we continue to point to is that in 2026 there is a collective bargaining agreement that expires, and then a new one will get negotiated between the league and the unions. That's a critical milestone for us to keep our eye on, because we believe that will be the catalyst that will get the two expansion awards kind of over the top. So with that in mind, we have a lot of work to do to get Zidell Yards shovel ready and this private public partnership solidified. So we're looking potentially at 27, and that's not that far off if you think about it. And then we'll put shovels in the ground immediately, and a ballpark takes around 30 to 36 months. So opening day could be as early as 2030 for us.
Have you had any conversations with MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred about a team coming to Portland?
Yeah, we've had a steady communication for the years that we've been at it. And we do believe that Portland just punches way above its weight. We're a desired market. We're in the top 25 in terms of media ratings. Actually, at the last World Series with the Yankees and the Dodgers, the Portland area was the fourth largest ratings, only behind New York, LA, and Phoenix. So our market is very preferred. We have a compelling story to tell. And we believe the league's going to be very intrigued and very motivated when we pull all this together.
So some people are concerned. I talked to some people down who work and live at the waterfront. They're concerned about the infrastructure and parking and any construction to get, some 30,000 people in and out of that stadium. What is your response to them?
I'd kind of take a different tact, not to flip the script, but I'm just so impressed that Oregon and Metro and TriMet and the city and the state invested already in an incredible amount of infrastructure. If you think about the Tillicum Crossing Bridge, all of our mass transportation, basically would be at the entrance of our stadium there. So we actually want to leverage a lot of the infrastructure investment that's already been made and then add to it. We're in weekly meetings with the city right now and multiple bureaus. And so we'll continue to work on transportation. But the Tillicum Crossing Bridge is a gift. It connects east and west. Remember, 60 of our 81 home games are between Memorial Day and Labor Day. We see people crossing over that bridge, getting to the ballpark maybe 10 different ways. And we'll figure out the parking structures over on the east side and the west side. There's lots of parking to tap into, but we're not concerned at all. We think it's going to be fun to actually get to that ballpark a number of different ways.
All right, Craig Cheek, founder and president of the Portland Diamond Project. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, now let's look even closer at the money part of all of this. They've hired the groups Echo Northwest to study the bonding side of this, and those economists are also in the process of completing a full economic impact report. Right here is the document they went over in this morning's hearing. It is full of a lot of industry language that frankly is a little bit tough to unpack, but we've got some help tonight to give us all a better understanding of things. Dr. Michael Wilkerson is the Director of Economic Research with Echo Northwest. He's been on the show before in our Doom Loop discussion, but tonight we're talking baseball. So Dr. Wilkerson, thanks so much for coming back.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, so for those of us who are not economic experts like yourself, can you give us an overview of what you found when looking into SB 110?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly, as you mentioned, there's a lot of jargon. And I think when you're looking at projections right now, the macro markets are very uncertain. And so the largest driver of that uncertainty is interest rates. And interest rates, when you're talking about a 30-year bond, really make a huge difference. And so what we are trying to understand effectively is, since SB 5, nearly 2 decades ago now, or more than 2 decades ago now, was passed, there's been a lot of escalation in terms of what it costs to build a stadium, but similarly a lot of escalation in terms of player salaries. And so what we are trying to understand effectively of what is a reasonable range that the player salaries could support in a host of market conditions to help inform what that cap could be in terms of the state's maximum contribution. Ultimately, though, that will be determined by the market at that time. And so the state is basically just putting a cap on it. This is no means an attempt to try to actually estimate what would be underwritten today or even in 5 years from now.
So your memo today talked about establishing a sports authority or public facilities district paired with the bonding element. Can you explain what exactly that means and how those two things work together?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key here is trying to get to a tax-exempt bond status. And what that does is allow you to offer a lower interest rate than you would on a taxable bond. And so to do that, there must be a public nexus in the sense of who's owning the actual stadium, and it must be available for public use. And so there's precedent in Seattle and many other places of creating these public facilities districts, and they're the ones who effectively own the stadium during the time of the indebtedness.
Okay, Dr. Wilkerson with Echo Northwest, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Of course.
Now, despite all the talk of using future athletes' state income taxes to pay for part of this project, some Portlanders believe they will be asked to chip in. Here's what one woman named Christine told me today when I asked her if she thinks some of the cost will fall on taxpayers.
Taxpayers? Oh, of course it will. That's how it works.
Why do you say that?
Just past experience. And plus, I don't think Portland is the big baseball town that they keep pushing.
Well, joining us now live is the Oregon State Treasurer, Elizabeth Steiner. Treasurer Steiner, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
So obviously a lot of concern about this from taxpayers, but as Oregon's chief investment officer in charge of state money, what is your reaction to SB 110 and the potential $800 million in bonds?
I think it's really important for people to understand that this bonding would only use new revenue, not existing revenue, not existing bonding capacity. It's brand new capacity from brand new revenue, the players' salaries, as you mentioned earlier, it would pay off these bonds. So the money wouldn't even exist. The money that will pay off these bonds wouldn't even exist if we don't get the baseball stadium, and the bonds won't be issued if we don't get the team. So it's very important for people to understand that this is not taking away from other kinds of bonding the state already does, and it's not the taxpayers who are going to be on the hook. It's the players and the team employees and visiting players and team employees who will be paying for these bonds.
So some of this financial talk, let's be honest, can get dense. So let's pretend I'm a third grader. Can you explain the bond process for us?
Sure. Many projects are too expensive to pay for just out of your bank account, right? And so Oregon, like many other states, issues bonds. Bonds are promises, essentially. Somebody gives us a certain amount of money and we say, we're going to pay this money back to you plus a certain amount of interest. And as Mike mentioned, or Wilkerson mentioned, it's a lower rate of interest if we can make it tax-free, so people don't have to pay taxes on this. So we say we will pay you back your money plus a certain percentage on top of that over a certain period of time so that we can have the money up front to build this stadium. We cannot pay for, most people can't pay for a $5 billion stadium all on their own right up front. And one of the ways we can help with this, and we help with building bridges or roads or community libraries or schools or university buildings already in this state, by selling bonds that we pay back over a period of time.
So do you see the Portland Diamond Project as a good investment for the state? And if so, what is your message to these concerned taxpayers?
I appreciate their concern, and yes, I think it's an excellent investment. As I said earlier, it's important for people to understand that this is brand new revenue. It's money that we would not be getting into the state if the baseball team doesn't come here. So we're not asking people to pay from existing tax base or take money away from schools or healthcare or anything else. This is brand new money paying for a brand new project. And after the money is paid off, after those bonds are paid off, all that money will become, all those taxes will become part of our general fund to help pay for schools and healthcare and firefighters and all the important things that we care about in this state. Professional teams, when done right, are great economic drivers for the community. They create jobs. Just building this stadium will create thousands of excellent, high-paying construction jobs, which is why all of our labor unions are supporting this project as well. And then when the stadium's up and running, the players, the front office staff, the trainers, the coaches, all of those people will be providing revenue to our community, first to pay off the bonds and then to pay for the services that Oregonians depend on.
All right, Oregon Treasurer Elizabeth Steiner, thanks so much for your time tonight.
My pleasure.
Okay, now we want to hear your thoughts about both Senate Bill 110 and for the $800 million in bonds, as well as the MLB to PDX idea as a whole. Do you want professional baseball in Portland? Why or why not? So let us know. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. We're back right after this.